The Florida Gators recruiting hot streak that started with 4 commitments on Saturday still hasn't cooled down, and we're closing in on 48 hours since their big official visit weekend ended. After a weekend that resulted in 6 commitments, just when the dust began to settle, Billy Napier did it again, his 7th commitment in 2 days. This time it was elite linebacker Jamonta Waller out of Mississippi. Let's bring on coaching insider Jesse Simonton to discuss what's happening in Gainesville. Jesse, you've been talking about it on the show. It's a pivotal year for Billy Napier and the Gators. But what does this off-field success mean for the program right now?
I think it couldn't have come, at a better time. Napier needed to kind of build some goodwill. They had started off fairly strong in the 2024 recruiting class, but then things just kind of seemed to stagnate, I think, for the last several weeks. Then you have some bad news where, you lose kind of one of your blue chippers, the 4-star running back, Chauncey flips to Georgia. So the fact that they've been able to parlay this success with just a deluge, it's been raining like crazy in Gainesville lately, and Napier certainly got a deluge of commits there. I mean, they're up to, the number 2 class in the on-3 recruiting rankings, and that's exactly where this program, I think, needs to be if they're going to reassert themselves and become a national championship contender again.
Yeah, and I like, you mentioned Austin Simmons, who flipped to Ole Miss before the weekend started, and Lane Kiffin got on Twitter and was trolling Billy Napier and the Gators. But now, after this weekend, those trolls are looking a little stale. Is it time for Billy to stuff Lane in a locker at this point?
I mean, Billy certainly Lane's troll game was on its A game this weekend, because the fact that he used the whole Tom Petty thing, both being petty himself and then using the free falling graphic. I thought that was great, but in the end, Tom Petty, Billy Napier didn't back down, and
No.
he's come out swinging. And again, this couldn't have come, at a better time for a Florida program that I think we've talked about it on this show before. I think there's some angst and frustration within the fan base. They cannot let, apathy set in. And so if Billy Napier can build as much kind of goodwill, again, use that, I think that's going to be the buzzword here, goodwill as he can before what looks like still going to be a challenging 2023 season, the more the merrier.
Yeah, Lane got the retweets, but Billy got the last laugh in that one. What do you make of this class, mostly made up of sort of national recruits? What do you make of that?
Yeah, I just think it's interesting that, a year ago, Billy did a pretty strong job recruiting the state of Florida. But even then, Georgia signed the majority of those top 25 prospects. But still, the basis of Florida's class last year that I think had 18 blue chippers was from the Sunshine State. That's been totally the opposite thus far in 2024. For whatever reason, again, just from a macro perspective, I'm not on the ground like some of our recruiting, intrepid recruiting reporters. But for whatever reason, Florida doesn't have a lot of traction with in-state prospects this cycle. So Billy Napier and company have simply pivoted. They've gotten guys out of Georgia, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, Texas. They obviously dip into Mississippi, as you mentioned, and get the big pass rusher last night. So they're certainly kind of broadening their reach and kind of showing that, hey, Florida can still be a national brand.
And as the Gators sit at number 2 in the On3 industry rankings, Miami and FSU both sitting outside the top 10. Does this put a little bit of pressure on Mike Norvell and Mario Cristobal?
I think Mario Cristobal certainly is under his own pressure because of kind of the smoking crater that was year one down in Coral Gables. But I think the more interesting kind of dynamic here is what's going to happen with Florida State and Mike Norvell. They too, much like Florida, got off to a very quick start in the 2024 recruiting class. But unlike the Gators, they've still been on pause, it seems, for the last couple months ago. I don't think they've had a commitment since they flipped the 5-star tight end from Georgia. And so that's not to say they don't have traction with a number of blue chip prospects. Obviously they just hosted the 5-star corner Chester this past weekend. And I think, he is among many blue chippers that, Mike Norvell is trying to land. But Mike Norvell needs to capitalize on this moment right now for Florida State football. He has, slowly built the Seminoles back into a contender. He's done that mainly on the back of the transfer portal, though. And he's well aware that, for sustainability purposes, to keep this thing running, you have to build a program via the prep recruiting process. And so FSU hasn't signed a top 10 class, I think, since 2017. Mm-hmm. That needs to change this fall. And so they need to start, making some real hay with some of these blue chippers. Right now, Florida has as many blue chip prospects committed, I think 11 or 12 as FSU has commitments total.
Well, Jesse, speaking of sustainability, UF fans want to know, is this class sustainable? I mean, the game's got to get played. There's a whole schedule ahead starting in the fall. Do you think that the Gators can finish, maybe not with the top 2 class, but with the top 5 class in 2024?
Well, right now it certainly seems like they're trending where they can land a top 5 class. Their average player ranking is right up there. It's not like they're stuffing this commitment list just with a number of names, so to speak. I mean, these are guys that Florida's beaten out: Penn State, Michigan, Tennessee, Florida State, and Georgia. For that big 370-pound defensive tackle out of the Peach State on Monday. I mean, that they're winning the head-to-head battles that they need to win. Now, can they keep all these guys in the boat if they go 4-8 or 5-7? That remains to be seen. But I think we both know it's much easier to get a guy committed now than trying to fight, tooth and nail and get them in the boat 6 months from now. And so they're off to a hot start. Again, the more the merrier. Spots are going to start getting taken up here because it sounds like the momentum isn't going to slow down anytime soon.
Yeah, I hear from coaches all the time about guys that might flip. Hey, I'd rather have them committed now than go try to flip them from another program. So the Gators are stacking wins this offseason. We'll see if it translates to the fall. Thanks for stopping by Coach's Corner today, Jesse.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
Thank you for watching. Make sure you smash that subscribe button for me. And remember to check out all the videos on the On3 YouTube page.